So welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So this is episode 130, which is a really great group chat that we just had with Irem Metin, who's recently the VP of Product at Upwork. So Irem was also previously at Shiftgig and TripAdvisor, so some really great experience when it comes to product and then expansion and growth for marketplaces more specifically. So this is a really great chat with Irem, where we got to learn more about her product experience, some unique insights, learnings, did a deep dive into Upwork as a talent and hiring marketplace, and also had a really great group Q&A. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and you're going to find it a great watch to the end. So Ronan, welcome to the group chat. You have some really incredible experience at notable marketplaces like TripAdvisor, Shiftgig, and then more recently Upwork. So I'm really excited to have you join us here today. And I'd like to start off by saying, huge thanks for taking the time to do so in advance. So before we really dive into things, I think it might be great if you could start off by sharing a little bit more in your background, though, for those that don't know you.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I started my career in banking and private equity, so on the finance side, which, doesn't give you a great overview of how to run a business or manage a team, but it's a great way to recognize patterns and then ask yourself questions around, what drives this business? What are the key risks and what do we go after? So I found those skills handy as I transitioned to a product career. But my first product role was at TripAdvisor. It was a very unique and great gig where I got to be part of a founding team for a brand new marketplace that we built there, a brand new business that we scaled to a third of their revenue within 5 years. After TripAdvisor, I joined Shiftgig, which was a marketplace startup matching shift workers to employers. And we went through a pivot and an exit from a marketplace to a B2B product. Wore many hats there, had a lot of learnings around, what are the right ways to grow a marketplace? So Shiftgig was my first talent marketplace, and that led me to Upwork, which is the world's largest work marketplace where employers can find, work with, and pay freelancers. I actually left Upwork at the end of last year to do more of what I love doing, which is consulting with earlier stage businesses. And currently I'm on that path and it's been great. So so a bit about me.
Yeah, so that's such a great background once again. And, thanks for sharing with us. So there's so much we can get into here, but I did want to go back to your time at TripAdvisor, since that's a marketplace, of course, many of us here know. So can you maybe start by sharing a little bit more about what led you to join TripAdvisor, then kind of overview of it as a marketplace, and maybe even breaking it down more specifically?
Yeah. So I'll give you the context around the time I joined, and then talk a little bit about the strategy that we chose to pursue. So TripAdvisor at the time was known for hotel reviews, as well as we had reviews for all sorts of sites, but you could book hotels on the site, and that's how we made money. And we'd gotten great at it. Was kind of our Achilles heel. We'd optimized the core business to a great extent. We'd kind of saturated growth, and we were seeing growth slow down. So what we did there to expedite growth and improve our unit economics, because we had incredible demand, incredible volume of travelers visiting the site every month, was to think of it, take this infrequent nature, the infrequent marketplace, and then try to add new use cases to improve the lifetime value of a traveler. So those new use cases became, those that were very adjacent to travel. So you book a hotel, you go eat out many times while you're traveling, or you book a tour or a museum. So that became kind of the new marketplace that we founded. So at the initial phases of that, our focus was on how do you kickstart supply, because we had review sites of review pages of all the properties, and we had a lot of demand from travelers, but we didn't have bookable properties. So that was one big theme that's common to many other marketplaces. And then we also thought about, as you're expanding into this new product and use cases, how do you do that? And we built this playbook around when do you buy versus build, you really understanding the capabilities that we had on both sides.
Yeah, no, that's really great. So yeah, I guess like could you walk us through a little bit more as far as, what some of those specific considerations are when maybe expanding, from a kind of core product offering into these more adjacent kind of use cases, and then how some earlier stage founders can kind of think about that themselves now?
Yeah, absolutely. So with product extension, which is a topic that I had the privilege of focusing on in all three of my roles, I think the first thing to really, the honest conversations I say, like you need to have a lot of honest conversations with yourselves and your leadership team around. Yeah, first start with the why. I've done this personally where I was kind of leading my teams to product expansion to overlooking some of the problems in our core business and then turning to expansion as a solution, which is absolutely the wrong way to go about it. So I think that's really the first place to understand, why are you doing this? Really ideal scenario is this is part of your company vision and strategy. It's you're embarking on the plan that it's going to get you to where you want to be in 5 years. Like that's ideal. But in the real world, we also know that a lot of things happen. Markets get competitive. Your board members get, eager and exploring new areas, or, an acquisition comes around that you just can't say no to. And those are all valid reasons. So when those reasons happen, I think when they come together, then you need to focus on how do you maximize your success. And that's done through, you give it the resources it needs, which is usually an independent team that's going to go pursue this, exploration and then finding product market fit through retention. You really need to understand, okay, what are the capabilities in my core that I have? How can I add to these capabilities? And then what are my missing capabilities? We did this really well at TripAdvisor where, we knew our core capabilities were around, like we had this demand side of the marketplace, but to kickstart the supply side, we had to think creatively. We kind of faked it till we made it. And then we also went around and acquired companies. So that set a very clear strategy for us. Another key thing at this point of expansion that, again, I think we did well at TripAdvisor was recognizing the importance of data. So as you're going from a single way to monetize to many ways to monetize, your success depends on a user comes in and you kind of got to lead them to the right way, to the right path. And that requires data capabilities. First around, getting and storing data from multiple sources, and then being able to have the right personalization engine so that you're leading the right customer to the right place. And then you also have to have the right A/B testing mechanisms, which we did at Trip, and that really helped us tremendously. And then finally, I would say really being able to look at, each use case and platform and then giving them what that's worth. And really, I can't really emphasize enough the importance of this, core team that's going and pursuing the new opportunities.
Yeah, no, those are really great. So I know we'll probably have a few questions on a few and dig a little bit deeper in that during the group Q&A. So, looking back though now, what do you think that you and the team did exceptionally well at TripAdvisor?
We had a very clear learning agenda about what it's going to take to grow this business. What are the what are things that we're really good at that we quickly have to apply to the new business? Those were things like SEO, and we had this ability to, we had a lot of data that we could, write models from and then really improve the data on the supply side of the platform. We moved quickly on a number of acquisitions. And then I think we really recognize what those acquisitions brought to the table and maximize those rather than just integrating the product itself. We learned a lot from the companies that we bought. So we bought the largest restaurant booking site in Europe, which was called La Fourchette, that we later rebranded to become The Fork. And the collaboration with them was just, amplified the value to, multiples really, really quickly. I think we got mobile at the time was similar to, how we're thinking about generative AI now. We really gave that a true, we built certain features that were really, unique to mobile, which, experiences, that's what you book on your phone. So we were we were good at starting with the problem, that you can solve in a unique way through mobile. Those were the things that differentiated us, and I think like made the new product very successful ultimately.
Yeah, and then also too, just for a little bit of context, what sense of scale were you at, when you first joined, and then maybe when you left?
The overall business was at about $1 billion in revenue. I think we were at around 800 million in revenue, but the experiences group wasn't really there. So when I left, we'd grown organically and inorganically some to around over 200 million in revenue, and then soon after, as I checked, the new business itself was about a third of the overall business. So really meaningful growth.
So moving on to Shiftgig, what led you to joining Shiftgig? And I'm going to say entering the world of talent and hiring marketplaces.
I first moved cities. I was living in Boston, then we moved to Chicago. Then I did the remote thing before remote was a thing, and decided that as a product person, that was really not scalable. And so I started, meeting founders here in Chicago and got introduced to the founders of Shiftgig. They just raised their Series C. They were growing at very impressive rates, but without the proper retention metrics and in many ways, which I'll touch on. But I really love the mission of, there's something about like when people are planning their honeymoons, it's cool. It's cool to be the product that they take out of their pocket, and but there's something about putting money in your users' pockets that makes you indispensable. They pay a lot of attention, and there's, a mission element to it that I really, to this day, that's why I stuck around talent marketplaces. They have a special place in my heart. But those are the initial reasons why I was drawn to Shiftgig.
Yeah, no, that's really great. So yeah, I was actually going to ask, if what was drawing you to talent and hiring marketplaces, considering that you, were at Upwork after that. But if we kind of go back to to Shiftgig, could you maybe give us like an overview about Shiftgig as a marketplace and maybe even a breakdown?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Shiftgig-like businesses. So it was a gig marketplace. So shift workers, very local, because in-person work delivered in industries ranging from warehouse workers, call centers, logistics, restaurants, conventions. You can really think of these short-term work arrangements that require so they had some kind of cross-sellability between different types of work. And at that point, our customers were people like Airmark or big convention centers to restaurants, restaurant chains. And we were kind of this contingent on-demand labor that you could, order from your phone and someone will appear in 4 hours. And it was like magic. A lot of our effort at the time, when I joined, we were, growing we were in 6 cities, we went to 14 cities really quickly, and revenue grew. A lot of our effort at the time was spent on demand, generating more demand, and then trying to reduce the cost of fulfilling that demand. But as I mentioned, so we lacked a lot of the proper retention metrics on both sides of the marketplace, what that leads you to, I hope none of you learned this the way we've done, is, you burn a lot of cash. And at some point, the story is written out for you where you're going to have to reduce your burn rate. And that path becomes, you make suboptimal choices along the way. And we had, several phases of that, which led us to first, we started, exiting unprofitable cities and then hiring clients who were very hands-on and we were unprofitable. Then we went as far as, pivoting from the marketplace model to taking the tools that we built and then selling those as a way for companies like FedEx and UPS or companies with large worker pools to deploy their workers themselves, which is an entirely different business. It's not a marketplace model anymore. But a lot of lessons there around expansion and what are the right metrics and how do you establish that stronghold and then grow from there for me.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, there's probably a lot we could get into in that, from all the learnings and kind of lessons. We do have quite a few, I would say, gig economy marketplaces here in the community, though. And what are some kind of specific challenges that you experience when it comes to gig economy marketplaces?
I don't know if this is a challenge, but it's something I wish I'd paid more attention to for sure. So when you think of, the value you're providing, the supply side and demand side, right? On the demand side, you're filling an emergency need in that in the realm of Shiftgig. And there are many other companies, right, who are providing, traveling healthcare workers or like work rise, like energy, like there's specific vertical marketplaces now that are providing contingent workforce services. So the nature of the work is it's last minute. It's hard to plan. So the dichotomy of like what our clients needed was that flexibility and the instant like flex up and down. And on our supply side, our talent, at the core of it, they want predictability. They don't like, of course, we all want flexibility in the new realm of work, but people want to know like, how much am I going to make from this app on a week? Can I count on that? And I think we chose to like focus a lot more on the worker side instead of making that less frictionful. Like removing the friction from that end goal, we focused on things like how do we like push notifications to remind them to do this and this, and like these extrinsic triggers and whatnot that were the core of what they needed. So that gig work itself, it's local. When I moved to Upwork, I felt this so much where at Upwork, it felt like liquidity was easier because you're not bound by the geography of the work being performed. And I think in a way, at Shiftgig, we made it more difficult for ourselves because if I could go back really and like redo it, the sustainable path would have been you pick a few pillars of categories and you build an amazing experience. Hopefully those pillars have some, cross-sell ability between them. You get to the right unit economics and then you expand from there. I think that's really the playbook for the hyper-local ones. But the global ones where the knowledge economy it's a little bit different.
This is so good. So, if we kind of focus on the hyperlocal marketplaces, right? And you mentioned as far as at Shiftgig, it sounds like a challenge that you face firsthand there and kind of a learning. So, what did that ultimately kind of lead to? You mentioned as far as like a pivot, but were there any kind of any specific ways that you helped solve for that? Maybe from like a product side.
We did. Maybe a little late, but I'll talk about some things that did work. So on the supply side, we came to the realization that, when you look at the unit economics, there's a great distribution, right? We had the activation rate was about, a little bit more than 50-50. So about like almost half of the workers that we onboarded didn't start earning. And among the people who earned, there was a great variance in it wasn't as high as 80-20, but somewhere close there where 80% of the revenue was being 70% of the revenue was filled by 30% of the workers. So when you look at that dynamic, you need to hone in on marketplace design. And there are two things. I think like really honing in on marketplace design and how you implement the match is really critical. So we ran some tests there that actually improve the activation rate. And then the second thing is, this was something I think like a learning that I took to Upwork as well, and it worked there, is you can learn a great deal. Like no matter, you're going to be supply stricken or demand stricken at various points of your journey. Like the life cycle of a marketplace starts maybe supply constraint and then shifts. But there's one constant, which is that your greatest supply, like your best workers are those who are most incentivized in a similar way as your company, because they earn and you earn, right? So, and they are hustlers. Like they figure things out. They figure out things to do on your technology that is not currently built. So by honing in onto who they are, what they're doing, like you can actually improve the overall experience by modifying your product to do more of what the best people, the best workers, the best supply is doing on your platform. And that is something that any gig marketplace can, easily perform. And then the third piece of advice and the thing that worked for us was, we were kind of a human in the loop model where in order to deploy the workers, we had to actually do some manual work. And, the vision of our founders and, leaders has been like, cut that out. Like human in the loop is bad. Like, you want to automate. You want to automate everything. But instead of automating for automation's sake, we were actually very intentional about what are we automating in, getting that supply vetted, interviewed, onboarded properly, and only removing things that were like worthy and didn't touch the end customer's experience. Those are some of the things that we did well, that I think are broadly applicable to other gig marketplaces.
Those are going to be super helpful, specifically like they mentioned as far as the human in the loop. So a lot of times here, that's something we discuss, and the kind of level of how much we should automate something, and at what point in time.
Don't hate the human in the loop. I think doing things that don't scale, as many say, or there's the demand, the product market fit for human touch, like human in the loop services, is larger currently than just technology itself. So I wouldn't write it off.
Yeah, so I did want to transition over into to Upwork. So what led you to joining the Upwork team? And then of course, many of us here know Upwork, but maybe for those that don't, could you kind of give us like an overview of Upwork as a marketplace, and maybe even breaking it down as a marketplace a little bit more specifically?
Actually, in between Shiftgig and Upwork, I worked on an idea that I was obsessing about, and I used Upwork to build it. And at that point in time, they reached out about this role that very much resembled what we've done at TripAdvisor, which was, you have a core product, it kind of saturated, the growth rate, expand to new products. And I was like, wow, this is destiny. Like I have to go join Upwork. But, at the core of it, I love talent marketplaces, and doing that at scale that Upwork is at was a very, very exciting opportunity. So I'm sure a lot of people in the community are familiar with Upwork, but they're the world's largest work marketplace. They were founded in 2013. Their roots go back to, early 2000s. They were the merger of two companies. So they had about, 3.8 billion was earned by freelancers on Upwork last year, 10,000 skills, 90 categories. So like very horizontal and very large scale opportunity. So I got to focus there on, I joined at this time of, emerging from COVID, where the market opportunity was booming. So add to, you take the scale and you add to that this market opportunity, and the equation gives you like this great ambition of growth. And so I joined at that point of how do you build a bridge from where we're at to where we want to be, which was, supplying freelancers or like freelancer marketplace to running the platform that runs the world's remote work. And that required, certain new product expansion opportunities. And so I got to focus on, a lot of my time there was focused on our path on, which new products are we going to build, and how do they tie to this vision of, being the platform for the world's remote workers.
Yeah, so I'd actually love to chat a little bit more about, at Upwork, how you thought about, growth and expansion. So maybe when you kind of first joined, what that was like as far as, thinking about that from like a category or kind of a growth and expansion side, and maybe some kind of insights from that.
Upwork it still is. It's a great core product that had incredible product market fit. And it grew really, this is, I'll convey my personal observations and kind of how my teams have thought through this, but Upwork had grown through, being a first comer to this incredible market and having amazing product market fit with its initial target market. And what we were seeing was kind of remote work was going mainstream. So what does that mean? You have your early adopters, and we all know, building for your early adopters is very different from building for your, the potential, the mainstream user. Like people like me hiring engineers is very different from my CTO hiring an engineer. So we wanted to have, if our mission was remote workers at the heart of every business, we have to think very differently when it came to new product strategy about, what that strategy was. So it involves a lot of themes around, in the past, in our core, we were focusing on building that core, enabling collaboration tools. We were, doing a lot of things to do things we feared, like circumvention, which is like the dirty word in the talent marketplaces. But moving from that mentality to going to mainstream requires you to think about, like, how do you educate and onboard effectively? Like, this is a new way to work. You're facing behavior change, which is very scary as a product person to do. So we had to think a lot about simplifying our flows, building new products that were a lot approachable than writing a very detailed job description that tells the other side exactly the specs of what you needed, which is not how the world operates. Shortening our time to value. So that was a third big theme, bringing the two sides together faster. Alignment. So the big black box in talent marketplaces is the work that gets performed. And it's very disempowering as a company to say, like, you do all this stuff, you onboard people, you match people, and then you don't know the core of what goes on. So we try to, facilitate that success through better alignment. And then finally, we built some tools of better ways to engage with talent. Like one of them was just recently announced, which was full-time hiring. We built this thing called consultations that talent really wanted. And again, going back to the theme of what is great talent doing today. So that became some of our strategy and approach.
So one thing that I did want to touch on specifically, as far as, a topic to go in a little bit more detail, if we think about the talent, right, and how many, all the different skills that they can have, and then also the categories and kind of service offerings. So, were there any specific kind of learnings as far as, how you managed across so many categories when it comes to that on the talent side at Upwork?
This is a really, really tough call on, putting myself in the shoes of, if I'm starting a talent marketplace today, do I go vertical or do I go horizontal, right? And vertical, obviously, there were many, many points in time of building product when I thought, like, why aren't we dedicating more resources to this verticalized roadmaps? Because you can delight your users more easily. So better user experience, you can have specialized tools and flows. But the beauty about horizontal marketplaces, especially if they can if the demand can get more, like can access more than one type of supply, is that unit economics tend to be better. So for us, it was really, really difficult to be great at, vetting an engineer and then a call center person in the same flow. So one of the things we started looking at and actually implementing was on recognizing that you need specialized capabilities to do this, and then using things like partnerships. So we developed partnerships to, for technical talent vetting, and then like we have this roadmap of other ways to vet talent, because vetting talent is one of your secret. It's really a core capability that you need to have. You need to get that right. It's the first question that your supply side is going to ask. Like, how do you vet these people? How do you know they are where they are? How do you know they're going to be able to do the work? So in that horizontal marketplace approach, I think it's really key to pick categories. Like we never went into in-person work because it's, not as adjacent as design, web development, marketing. Like those are our three big ones. And then really recognizing, okay, do I buy or build this capability to, understand who the worker is? And then maybe some tools as well. We invested in some tools to make the work product easier to happen, but we did not take the approach. It wasn't a luxury to say we'll build all of this ourselves. Like it's all going to be done in-house.
So on that note too, you mentioned as far as like on the tools, right, that you were building. So were those that you focused on like specific categories and, creating tools that were more specific for those use cases or categories and offerings, or was that more like a kind of across the board approach that you took with that?
We took a more across the board approach, and we focused on tools that were more like, I don't want to call it CRM, but it's enables you to like make more money on Upwork effectively. And then we've also built products that enable freelancers to bring their own customers on board. So like, how do you treat them as an acquisition vehicle? Because it's, again, very much aligned. And I'm sure, as if we had more resources, we could have, taken the more verticalized approach. But there was still a lot to do in the broader categories.
So also you mentioned a topic that I wanted to chat about a little bit more here, specifically for talent and hiring marketplaces, which is circumnavigating the platform or disintermediation. So that's one of the biggest challenges a lot of us face here. So how did you kind of think about that at Upwork, and what were some ways maybe that you solved for that?
I don't know if this is naive, but I don't. So the fear of circumvention can stop innovation. Like this has happened in my experience, where when we were trying to build consultations, people were, and I'm sure investors thought the same thing. Like, oh my gosh, you're going to get them talking to each other like immediately. You mean you can book a session? Like they're definitely going to leave the platform. It comes back to product market fit, right? Like your job as a company and our job as Upwork was to provide so much value to both sides. And it's easier to do in some settings, like, if there's higher frequency of work together, or if there's more fragmentation on both sides, if like the pain of the match is higher, right? Like it's a little easier to do. But for us, it really came down to, key features of security that we provided on both sides that solved it. Like it solved it, and it became too expensive for our supply to operate out of Upwork, because if they did the work on Upwork and improved their rating, it actually really translated to more dollars in the long term. And some of those, I think, really recognizing, what is the work you're doing? Is it the Uber that you have the secret like emergency button? Is it the insurance in Airbnb? It was similar for us. It was the payment insurance that we provided to freelancers that they log their work on their desktop. It makes it, you're working with someone on the other side of the world that you don't know, who may or may not pay you. And so I think not spending too much time on the fear of circumvention versus like how can I amplify the value here? How can I provide more and more and more value here? I would much rather recommend founders to get to know your customer, know their pain points, know their deep fears, and then build features that simplify that, and then build the right reputation frameworks and systems to keep them engaged.
Those are really, really great points. So I feel like the reputations and ratings interviews could be an entire conversation in itself.
Yeah, very, very tough.
I'd love to chat about that a little bit more. So what were some of the maybe the learnings around ratings interviews?
I'll generalize my learnings from both Shiftgig and Upwork, and I think this is such a tough topic, and the pendulum here swings between what you optimize for. If you are kind of conservative, and if you can optimize for and focus on signals of work that happens on your platform, like this is what we've done at Shiftgig. we kind of disregarded you as a person. Like if I joined, I start from zero, and all my reputation would be based on the work I've done on the platform. And then the ranking algorithms would heavily favor people with the proven performance on the platform. I think most labor, like talent marketplaces, do the same thing. The smart ones do give ways for unproven talent to create new signals very quickly so that you can recognize great talent and enable them to earn more than what they can earn elsewhere. And I think that should be the mission of, especially like scaled platforms like Fiverr or Upwork, or, they really need to be able to say, if any of us quit what we're doing and if we join these platforms, it shouldn't take the amount of hustling and, the work that it currently takes to start earning. What can you do to enable that? Like reputation comes combining on-platform and off-platform reputation. I think it's a great strategy, especially for new companies, right? If you wanna be competitive on the supply side, if you wanna like appeal to great supply, you can be, I'm gonna interview you, I'm gonna do something unscalable, and you're gonna start with a certain reputation and trademark and badge that's going to enable you to earn faster, because that activation, that promise is really, really critical. But then that also creates disincentives on the platform. But I think that question of how much is on-platform reputation worth? How much is off-platform reputation work? How do you bring the two together? When is one more important than the other? It's so, so important and unsolved today.
That's going to be super helpful because I know a lot of founders, we do think about that, how much should be on platform versus kind of off, and especially in the early stages to, when you might not have those existing kind of ratings and reviews on platform.
Yeah.
So cool. So we actually have quite a few questions here. So we're going to get to some in a little bit. But I would say looking back at your time at Upwork, this could probably be a whole other conversation itself. But what were some of the kind of key learnings from your time, and more specific to Upwork and maybe as a kind of talent and hiring marketplace?
Being really tuned into supply. I think we've done some of the things really well in what we've done hadn't been done at the company before. When that's the case, you can't have, I'm going to take this, Houston playbook and apply it in Chicago. It's not that the same plug and play. So you have to be very disciplined about what are my principles, what tools am I going to use, what rituals am I going to follow. And I think we've done a really good job with approaching that. And one of those tools and principles was supply, like observing supply, and then really looking at, can they be that growth driver as on the supply side. I think that another key learning is getting around, really being focused. Another thing we didn't talk that much about is at that scale, we served 20 people companies, 5 people companies to, 30% of Fortune 100 worked with us. So really having that strategy around what is your solution? How does that scale to enterprise or, the large different types of users? Where do you start? In these marketplace businesses, it's especially like marketplace dynamics make everything a little bit more complex. So I had a lot of learnings there as well. And I think that it really, I don't know if it's the recognizing the source of the value you're providing to both sides and then amplifying that in your core and then new product development. A ton of learnings on that front for me.
Yeah, certainly. Cool. So we're gonna just jump right into questions here. Hey, John, did you want to come on?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for being here. This is super helpful. So many valuable notes. I'm building a talent marketplace, a coaching marketplace. So lots of similar challenges, but at a much smaller scale. My question is around your learnings around connecting the two sides. I know Upwork has different options where you can browse supply, you can post a job and then supply can bid on that job. And then, also Upwork will help find you the right pro. I think all of us building talent marketplaces have to figure out like, what is the right model? Is it encouraging customers to send messages or book immediately? Is it posting a job and then having supply bid? Just curious if you have any learnings on those models.
Yes. So I talked about this, like shortening the time to value point, and there are different ways of doing that. What I found really interesting at Upwork was, the success of my product was in the hands of my customers' ability to tell me what they needed. It was so critical. And as we kind of grew and grew and grew, and it became, when humans are involved and when humans are governing the match with their specifications, you'll get to a point where recognizing the, like, let's say the end goal through their description becomes a limiting force for the business, especially if you're dealing with people who may have a harder time letting you know what they need. So that was very much the case for us. Maybe in coaching it's a little bit different, but I think the point becomes a mix of, educating, onboarding, and then getting the right signals in a way that doesn't just, it's not a form. It's a little bit of like, I know it when I see it, which is what we built with these projects features, like a transactable portfolio. So you see it and you're like, yeah, I like this. I can use a website like that. Versus saying like every component, spelling it out. And then being able to use your onboarding and account creation to like zone in on a few things. I think TopTal does this really well. If you look where they ask you the critical questions, right? Like, have you worked with a freelancer before? What's your budget? And are you hiring in your domain? I'm making this up, but I remember them like really understanding what's going to drive success at the end of this engagement. So for, a coaching marketplace, it may be like, how many times do you want to text or do you want to call? What's your style of, and starting from those attributes to build up on, and then also giving people a little bit more control around the match. The match is a very hard part of it because we all know, like as marketplace founders, the match becomes overwhelming sometimes. Sometimes you might have the best 20 results, but if you show them all 20, they're going to churn because it's overwhelming. So the other thing would be now focusing on the UX of presenting the match. Present 3, but be really distinct, like intentional about why. That worked really well for us as well, for people who may not like know what they need. Like, we're showing you this because we have the inkling that you value this attribute, and that's why we're showing that to you. Guides people on and encourages conversion.
Super helpful. Thank you.
That's a great question. Hey, Mike, did you want to come on?
This was great. Super helpful. I'm building Night In, which is the freelance marketplace for high-end hospitality workers. So sommeliers, mixologists, chefs, mostly experience focused today, and then continuing to add new features for them to monetize their talent. And sort of on that topic of new features for supply, I'm curious, taking a step back, you're running these marketplaces that presumably have a lot more supply than demand. You talked earlier about all these new features that you were constantly rolling out for your supply. How do you balance sort of percentage of your roadmap focused on new features for supply versus new features for demand, given that at the end of the day, you said earlier, what's important for the supply is they make the money, and they don't make the money if the demand side doesn't come onto your platform and pay for a job. So just maybe talk about sort of at a high level how you think about sort of that balance of new features for demand versus supply.
It's such a hard question to answer, but if I were if we were working together on your business, what I like the questions I would ask you and the questions I've asked myself in, coming into these roles were, you need to lay out your strategy in a way, like your whether it's your strategy for the next 3 months, next 6 months, needs to focus on the friction that exists today. And friction I use broadly to say like lack of liquidity, like the match isn't happening. So our jobs as product people is to know the why. You need to be able to dissect at that point in time in that category. What are the friction points that are in the way of success? So these could be at the beginning of the journey of a marketplace. The pendulum is going to swing, right? Like it's going to continue to swing, but you need to tune into these signals to know where in the point you are. It may be that you have no supply. So you go get the supply. And then the pendulum's going to swing. You're going to have too much supply. And that's going to be in the way of conversion. So your strategy could be, a better guided match or shortlist, a curated match flow that collects signals and then creates like a progressive match for your clients. On the other side, the pendulum's going to swing again. Like if you have amazing product market fit and you have all the supply, but it overwhelms your clients and they're going elsewhere, a competitor is going to come on and they're going to build tools that draw the best supply and your client's going to go there. So it's this way of, your best supply governs the quality of your experience in all marketplaces, even when you don't feel like you're limited by supply. So I would get really very specific on, at this point of time, like what are the biggest problems in way of your conversion? Is it that you're not retaining people? Why? Is it that you don't have predictability of, their calendar or is it that you don't have enough demand, right? And then asking that question, like not taking that as a granted, but asking that question continuously in different points of the life cycle of your company will enable you to focus on the right roadmap investments. Because your roadmap needs to be, you need to solve the biggest problems. That's what we're doing, right? And that would be my kind of cheat answer to your question.
Cool. So we are almost out of time here, so I definitely want to be conscious of that. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. This is such a great chat, and we learned a lot from you here. So I did want to just, take a few minutes to learn a little bit more about, what you're working on now, and also how founders can kind of maybe even reach out to you.
I'm consulting now, which has been, something I thought I'd never do because I'm very hands-on, and I love teams and I love building products. But it's been a ton of fun. So if you have questions or if you're interested, do reach out. So I've been, I have a couple of clients now that dedicate quite a bit of time. So it's not just an hour a month capacity, but yeah, so that would always be helpful for me. And I still, I tend to still specialize in the talent marketplaces, recruiting, HR tech, so that world.
Well, thank you again. This is a really fun chat, and thanks everyone for the great questions today.